Sometimes we don't actually get any songwriting done, or we get stuck on songs because we are overcomplicating things. So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 ways to simplify songwriting that I think every songwriter should know. So one way to simplify songwriting is to understand that knowledge should serve songwriting, not the other way around. Learning things like music theory, including things like new chords to use, and learning meter and how to write better lyrics, all of that is great. And it can help you to write better songs because it equips you to be more intentional in your songwriting. But we should never allow our songs to serve the rules, whether that's rules of meter or of rhyming, or the rules that we set when we create an arbitrary rhyme scheme, or whether it be rules of music composition. And how clearly and vividly do your lyrics communicate is the thing that should matter, not whether you followed some helpful but not ultimately useful rules. So for instance, if you're following common meter, which is 4 emphases followed by 3 and then 4, 3 again, which often comes with something like maybe 8 syllables, 6 syllables, 8 syllables, 6 syllables, but it doesn't have to. But then say in your second verse, you actually break outside of that and really you kind of have 4 emphases, 3 emphases, 3 emphases, 3 emphases. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
Hey, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Because even though, yes, you did set the standard that you're following the common meter, you don't have to continue to do that. If the melody works perfectly well with the 3 emphases and the lyrics work and you're communicating exactly what you need to with your lyrics, first of all, nobody's gonna notice unless they do some in-depth analysis of the song. And second, our songs don't serve these rules. The rules are meant to serve the song. And the second that the rules no longer serve your song, you should throw them out. And that doesn't mean that those rules aren't useful. Understanding things like music composition rules and things that derive from understanding music theory or how to write a better lyric and meter, all of those things are really helpful, but they're helpful until they aren't. And the moment that they are no longer helpful is when we stop using them as helpful tools, but instead utilize them as sort of this ultimate goal that we have. Think about something like a haiku. If you write a poem that's intended to be a haiku, but then you realize, oh no, I had 6 syllables instead of 5, where there's supposed to be 5. Who cares? Does the poem communicate exactly what it needs to? The rules of a haiku are just arbitrary. And just like a haiku's rules are ultimately arbitrary, that's going to be the same for any rule that is meant to be helpful to songwriting. So we need to make sure we're not losing the plot or losing the forest for the trees when it comes to our songs. Our songs don't serve these rules. Your lyric does not serve your meter. Your lyric doesn't serve your arbitrary rhyme scheme. Your music doesn't serve music theory. It should be the opposite. And the second that the meter no longer serves the lyric or the rhyme scheme doesn't serve the lyric, we should be willing to throw it out or make some sort of adjustment. Because your lyrics communicating what they need to well, and your melody sounding natural and good, whatever that means, is what matters, not following any arbitrary rule that, again, is something that is helpful but not the ultimate goal. Another way to simplify songwriting is to make your song more simple. So when it comes to songwriting, or really any art, I think when people say simple is good, that's just a total lie. Of course, simple isn't always good. But it's also a lie, anybody that leads you to believe that complex is good. Different songs, different pieces of art, different movies have different needs. Sometimes simple is good, and sometimes complex is good. It's almost like it's about whether the song is good, not about whether it's simple or complex. Because you can have a simple song that's great, and you can have a complex song that's great. You can have a simple song that sucks, and you can have a complex song that sucks. But I think often we will end up writing our best music when we push ourselves in both directions. Push ourselves to write music that's more simple than what we normally do. And then also sometimes push ourselves to write something a little more refined and a little more complex than we normally do. If we aren't pushing ourselves in both directions, we probably aren't growing as a songwriter. But if you're struggling to finish songs, that maybe is a sign that you should push in the simplify direction. Think about it in terms of movies. Yes, sometimes deeply artistic movies that are 2 hours long and have complex, deep, emotional characters is great. But sometimes it's a great movie to just have an hour and a half of laughs. And maybe the characters aren't super realistic and the plot is nonsensical, but the the goal of the movie was to make you laugh, and it was effective at that. That can be the same for our songs. Not every song needs to fit the same requirements. Maybe sometimes having a simple, sort of tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic song rather than some super serious, really artsy, really deep lyric, maybe that's just not necessary for all songs. And especially if you're struggling to finish a song, that's a good sign that maybe it's time to simplify. Because you can write a great song off of 2 chords, just like you also can write a great song off of 30 different chords. Because again, that's not going to determine whether your song is good or not. But you know what? It is gonna be a lot easier to finish a song if you decide, you know what? I'm struggling to finish a song. I'm gonna do a 2-chord song. That's it. I'm gonna try to make a song work with just 2 chords. It's going to be way easier to get done than trying to write this super complex and really interesting chord progression. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do that. It just means that if right now you're struggling to finish, don't push further in that direction. It's time right now to simplify. Once you get out of this rut and once you're writing songs again, then maybe it's time to push back in the complexity direction. And another way to simplify songwriting is with your songwriting process, because not every way of creating a song is equally easy or equally simple. For instance, if you start your song with a poem and you don't know any music theory, and then you figure out the melody for your poem because you sing it, and now you're stuck with, now I gotta figure out the underlying chords for my melody. If you don't know any music theory, good luck. I mean, you can, but it's going to be a difficult, long road. But even if you don't know music theory, which I would encourage you to learn music theory, it has never, ever, ever done anything but helped somebody with songwriting. But if you don't know music theory, and even if you do know music theory, the easiest way to write a song is to start with a chord progression, or maybe another form of song engine. It could be a bass line or a piano riff. But simplest of all, start with a chord progression, write a melody to go with that chord progression, because you don't need to know any music theory for that. You can just go by ear. You know when you're singing a note that's off key because you're generally musical. So you know that, like, okay, that melody didn't quite work. And we're all pretty used to singing on key, so it's going to be fairly easy to improvise some decent melodies off of the chord progression we've chosen. Now at this point, you have basically all the music, so you just need to listen back and say, okay, what does it sound like this song would be about? That's your theme. And then once you have your theme, you can then proceed to write the lyrics. This is going to be the easiest way to write a song. Do I think that you should write every song this way? No! But if you are struggling with finishing songs, this is a great way to simplify. Do the simplest way, the easiest process to write a song, because you're struggling to finish songs or you're struggling to write songs. That's the time to simplify in every way possible, and one of those ways is to simplify the songwriting process and do the easiest songwriting process that exists. So with your songwriting process, if you're trying to actually finish songs and you're trying to simplify, don't paddle upstream, just go downstream. And downstream is going to be starting with the chord progression, then the melody, then the theme, and then the lyrics. It's the easiest way to write a song, especially if you don't know music theory, but even if you do know music theory, that's still going to be the easiest process. So if you're somebody who's been struggling with finishing songs, or just someone who feels like you could use some simplification in your songwriting, there are 3 different ways to simplify your songwriting that I think every songwriter should know. So I know at the end of idea 3, I just said, oh, and the last step is write lyrics, and you may think, well, Joseph, that's not super trivial, writing lyrics, and I would agree. I think lyric writing is often the most difficult part of the songwriting process, especially if you actually care about getting the lyrics right and having an actually good lyric. So I've broken down that process into 6 steps, because I think if we sit down and just say, improvise brilliant poetry, we're setting ourselves up to fail, because humans just don't work that way. So I've broken up lyric writing into baby steps that I use that, at least for me, has helped me to consistently make lyrics that I'm actually proud of and feel good about, instead of feeling like it's just sort of luck when you finally come up with a good lyric, which is what it feels like when you don't have a process, breaking up the lyric writing process into baby steps. So be sure to check that out. It's at songwritertheory.com/lyric checklist. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.